Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. And thank you for joining us on this beautiful Wednesday evening for Horizon's September community webinar, where we'll be discussing the 10,000-pound elephant in the room that nobody likes to discuss or admits even there, and that is resolving complaints. But with a twist on how it can save your money and, most of all, your sanity. Before we do that, though, folks, a little bit of formality. Some introductions are in order, so let me introduce myself. My name is Brian. I'm the onboarding and training specialist at Horizon. And at any point, if you need my assistance, Alan's going to be talking during the presentation, but I'll be available in the chat. So if you got a question, need some help, send your questions my way. We can chat, and otherwise, email me, give me a call. Always here to help you out. And of course, the man of the hour, Alan Carson, president of Carson Dunlop. How you doing tonight, Alan?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Brian.
Excellent. I'm glad you're here. Glad you could share some time with us to discuss resolving complaints. And I'm going to pass the reins over to you in just a second there, Alan. But, want to make sure everyone can understand how they can participate tonight. So the control panel is going to be on the right side of your screen. 3 basic things I want to point out. Expand or minimize it using this option. Select your preferred audio method. If you do choose phone call, you'll get a toll-free number, so you can still dial in and listen by phone and ask your questions. Don't hesitate. Type them in, send them to me. I'll make sure they get addressed by Alan during the Q&A. All right. Without further ado, folks, I'm going to be passing the reins over to Alan. Give me 1 second here.
Okay. How did we do?
We are good to go. We are on your screen, Alan. I'm going to mute myself, and please carry on.
All right. Let me get that out of the way. Well, first of all, welcome, and thank you for being here. So tonight, I'm going to ramble on probably for the better part of 90 minutes. Don't ask me how I've got 90 minutes talking about resolving complaints, but I always have a lot to say. So apologies for that. And I'm going to start with something that a lot of you have probably seen before, but it applies particularly well to the topic this evening. So this is my tongue-in-cheek definition of home inspection. So it's a business with illogically high liability, slim profit margins, and limited economies of scale. It's an incredibly diverse, multidisciplined consulting service delivered under difficult in-field circumstances before a highly stressed, hostile audience with differing interests in an impossibly short time frame, requiring the production of an extraordinarily detailed technical report almost instantly without benefit of research facilities or resources. Sound like a day in your life? I get it, absolutely. And it's actually an excellent reminder for what a special service we provide. I know of no other consulting profession that does the level of work that we do under the conditions we do in the time frame that we do. So I don't think we ever want to forget that. We provide incredible value for an incredibly low fee. I won't dive into that because I could spend 90 minutes talking about that, and that would not be what we're supposed to be doing tonight. Now, let me see if I can get the slide to advance. There we go. So I've got an agenda, and as I say, I've got a lot of words to say tonight for reasons I don't quite understand, but I've got 7 different topics to cover. So bear with me. What I'm going to ask you to do is 2 things. If you can, pour yourself a glass of something you like to drink, get comfortable, sit back. As Brian said, feel free to ask your questions in the chat along the way, and we'll try and get to them at the end. And as always, we'll be distributing a video of this after the fact, so we'll be recording it. And so if you miss part of it, have to leave, whatever, we'll take care of you. Okay, so tonight I'm going to talk, we're really talking about resolving complaints, but there's 2 components, and one is risk management and the other is complaint resolution. I love the risk management part because, quite frankly, prevention is better than cure. It's true in diseases and it's true in home inspection complaints. Okay, I'm going to start with a quick poll, or actually I'm going to ask Brian to start with a quick poll because Brian's in control. So I'm going to ask these questions, and Brian, you tell me when the poll's set to go up, and I'm going to let you lead through that.
All right, poll's ready. Let me know when you want me to launch it.
Go ahead, hit go.
All right, folks, you're going to see the poll on screen, and you can select how many complaints you've had. I do believe you want to preface that by how many inspections they had, though, Alan, by chance?
No, what I'd like to do is, for the students and the new folks in the audience, I'd rather you hold off on this one because you folks won't have had any complaints yet, or not many, so I don't want to skew the results too much. So I'd really like the people to respond to be people who have done at least 200 inspections. Sorry, I should have explained that before I started the poll because I'm a moron. Sorry about that, Brian. So yeah, if you've not done any inspections or have done very few, this probably isn't a fair question for you. So I'd like to just have the folks respond who have done a bunch of inspections, and then I think you probably got the three choices there.
Perfect. Well, you know, we've let it go for over 45 seconds, and it gave us a good perspective. I'm just going to close, and then I will share the results, and I will let you know, Alan, because you don't get to see it. So again, might have been skewed display preference, but 33% 0, 8% 1, two complaints, 2 to 3 is 33, and more than 3 is 27. So the bulk of people have had 2 or more complaints, over basically 60% of the response.
Good stuff. And again, I might have poisoned the pond a little bit by failing to qualify it at the beginning, but that's okay. So still a relevant number. This isn't a promise, but it's probably reality. If you are in home inspection long enough, you're probably going to get a complaint. So I can tell you that after 42 years and having done a few 100,000 inspections, we've had more than 3 complaints, safe to say. Okay, so you're hearing the voice of experience here, somewhat sadly. So people say, what do complaints cost my business? And again, this is taken over the long term and for an established company. And a lot of my colleagues in the States, multi-inspector firms and guys who've been around a long time, they say 1 to 2% of gross sales. And I'm going to tell you that that number is probably not realistic because it doesn't include everything. That's probably the number that people think of when they say, well, who did I have to give a fee back to, or make a settlement payment to, or pay my insurance company a deductible? But the total list includes all of these things. So a fee, refund, claim settlement, insurance deductible that we talked about. If you don't use your insurance or don't have insurance, defense costs can be an issue. Your time is one that people don't put in. As a professional consultant, as a home inspector, the only asset you have to sell is your time. If you spend 60 hours getting ready for defending a claim and researching and doing all that stuff, that's 60 hours taken away from your active, productive work. There's a cost to that. Insurance premium increases if you have a claim and they end up making a payment. And sadly, sometimes even if they don't end up making a payment, it can affect your insurance premium. Lost referral business. Sometimes you're absolutely right, but the perception is that you weren't. And real estate agents can spread bad news pretty quickly. It can cost you business that you don't even know about. And lastly, the psychological toll it takes on you. And believe me, I have been on both sides of this issue where I'm the inspector, where someone's making a complaint, and I know it's tough. I have also been a whole bunch on the side of one of our guys has a complaint, and I can be much calmer and much more logical and much more rational when it's not me. So I understand how difficult this is, believe me. And I will never say, don't sweat it, because that's ridiculous advice. You're going to sweat it. So all I can tell you is almost always, it's not as bad as you think it's going to be. But I do understand it takes a toll. So not an ideal topic, but we're going to hopefully, by the end of tonight, make you feel a whole lot more comfortable about the process. And it's part of the whole concept of the Horizon community. You're not alone out there. You've got some folks you can lean on. You've got some help when things get ugly. And remember that you can take advantage of that. Okay. Let me give you start with a really dramatic highlight. The largest lawsuit we've ever had, $900,000. So we inspected a multi-million-dollar house in a gorgeous neighborhood for a lawyer. Let me say that again, for a lawyer. He started to remodel and he found there were some problems. or his contractor found there were some problems. He didn't want to get his hands dirty, of course. So he sued the architect who had worked on the house previously for the seller. And amazingly, they got $450,000 from them, but that wasn't enough for him. Then they came after us. So as it turned out, there were some concealed problems, but they were concealed. They were only visible after they started to tear stuff apart to do remodeling. We did absolutely nothing wrong. Still, over a period of months, we spent $30,000 on legal fees. We settled for $60,000. So the total hard costs were $90,000. Insurance covered $78,000. So we were $12,000 out of pocket. But the whole process took about 4 person months. And I swear I aged 10 years. I don't know if you can see me on the screen, but I'm only 37 and I look a whole lot older than that. So it's tough. I get it. We've been through it in spades. So I'm also going to say that what you're going to get tonight is my opinion. There are no right answers here. And your philosophy and mine may not be the same, and your personal and business strategies are going to kind of determine how you go through this. So not everybody's wired the same, and that's a really good thing in the world. But here's my ask. Take what you can from this without having to agree with everything. So I need you to say, don't agree with that. Oh, I could use that, instead of kind of taking an all or nothing kind of approach to it. So you won't agree with 100% of what I say. I can almost promise you that, but hopefully you can find some nuggets in there that you can use. The other thing I'm going to say is that I would love to make this simple and give you a step-by-step 1, 2, 3 process, but I can't quite do that because not all customers are the same and not all situations are the same. You're going to have to be a little bit agile, flexible. You're going to have to pivot a little bit with this. It's just the nature of the beast. Okay, as usual, I preempted my slide by talking about that before I put the slide up. Don't worry about that one. Our philosophy starts out with this. Our long-term vision is to grow our business and to build a brand. I'm getting older, and I think now in terms of making a difference, leaving a legacy, and so on. I want our business to be solid and durable and carry on for a very long time. Referrals are important to us, both from clients and real estate agents. And I know some home inspectors don't like working with real estate agents. I get that. I respect that. I'm just not on the same page. I think the real estate agent is an important part of our network, at least for Carson Dunlop. I'm going to tell you that our philosophy is that we do as much as we can to make clients and agents feel well treated, but we don't always succeed. I can tell you from experience that especially with influential and top agents, bad news about a home inspector travels really quickly through the real estate community. So just be aware of that. I'm also going to tell you, this being 2020 and all, that social media can hurt your business. And we get terrific social media from things like Google reviews and so on, home stars in our market, Facebook reviews are great, but Yelp drives me crazy. There's our Yelp reviews. And anytime somebody types in Carson Dunlop on the on an internet search engine, this one comes up. And it's a stone in my shoe, has been for years. I can't get rid of it. I won't tell you the long, difficult stories, but these folks are tricky. So social media can have an impact on what you do. Is it fair? I'm going to say nothing about that. I'll just move on. What else about our philosophy? Well, I'm going to say that we're pretty good at what we do, and we are usually right. But like all human beings, we are sometimes wrong. And my philosophy is, when we're wrong, we do not try to sweep it under the carpet. We don't try and point the finger at somebody else. We don't try and stick our head in the sand. We actually admit it and try to make it right. And sometimes that's very painful. I feel that not only do we have a moral responsibility to our clients, that we have a long-term responsibility to our business. And sometimes paying money today with the idea of surviving tomorrow makes sense to me. May not be your business strategy, it's what makes sense to me. No apologies for that. I'm just telling you how I feel after these years. What about E&O insurance? I think E&O insurance is reserved for the big issues, the big problems. We have a really high deductible because we don't use our E&O insurance very often. We take care of the little stuff ourselves. Again, philosophically, you may have a completely different perspective. I respect that, but that's how we do it. Here's another part of our philosophy that you may not agree with. When people call to complain, we first of all listen, and when they stop complaining, which often takes a while, we start by thanking them. We thank them for calling. We tell them that we understand how difficult this situation is for them and what a tough call this is to make. Nobody enjoys making these kinds of calls or having these kinds of conversations, but we really appreciate that you reached out to us so that we can work together with you to resolve this. So my goal is to disarm people, surprise them, be responsive, give them something that they weren't expecting, and throw them off their game a little bit, quite frankly. So again, you're welcome to take this and use it. You're welcome to say, Alan, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I get it both ways. Okay, here's another part of our philosophy. Thinking about complaints and unhappy clients and lawsuits is miserable. So I choose to think of it as marketing. I choose to think of it as turning an unhappy client into a happy client, an adversary into an advocate. Using the Listen 360 terminology, turning a detractor into a promoter. If you can take somebody and turn their opinion around about your business, you've done your business and your brand a long-term favor. So if you can turn somebody from saying all kinds of bad stuff about you into somebody going, holy smoke, those guys treated me really fairly, then that is a significant win. You're not going to get that 10 times out of 10, but that's our goal. And we'll talk more about that a little bit throughout the evening. Let me talk about risk management a little bit. And what I'm going to tell you is that I think there's 3 times that it matters: before, during, and after the inspection. And when you summarize all 3 of those, I'm telling you, it matters all the time. So risk management, kind of a big deal. Let's talk about before the inspection first. Well, let's start with the basics. Here's a really good risk management tool: know your craft. Education programs. When we started, there was no education for home inspectors available. Now, there's a lot of education out there. There's our program, there are other programs. It's come a long way. And so you have a chance to get to know your craft and really become a professional consultant. And I think most of us are there. The fact that you're spending your Wednesday evening listening to me ramble tells me that you care about the quality of your work and what you do. I have a lot of respect for that. The second thing is communication, and that means both verbal and written. When people ask me about what's the world of home inspection like, what's the day of a home inspector look like, I say it's about 50% technical and 50% communication. And I really believe that's true. You can't have one and not the other and get by in this business. It's one of the things that makes it a somewhat unique business. And especially since that communication is that combination of on-site verbal and written communication. I'm going to tell you that get set up with your errors and omissions insurance and CGL. That stands for commercial general liability or comprehensive general liability, depending on which insurer you're talking about. I say have the insurance, but I'm going to say we don't market it. I know some home inspectors use the insurance thing as a marketing tool. It's part of their advertising. Here's why we don't do it. I think it's a negative message to send out. Hey, we're likely to screw up, and here's how you can dig yourself out of the hole. And secondly, I think it's a lightning rod for claims. Well, yeah, the guy was pretty good. I liked him all right, but he missed this thing. And I know if I sue him, it's not going to come out of his pocket because he's insured. So I'm going to go ahead and do that and see how much money I can get out of the big bad insurance company. It doesn't really work that way, folks. And so I don't want to send that message to my clients. Again, A lot of people disagree with me. I spend most of my life in disagreements with people. I'm okay with that, but that's how we do it. Lastly, I'm going to say you want a really good inspection agreement. And I love Horizon dearly, and I'm very proud of what we do, but I really wish you wouldn't just take our sample inspection agreement and use it. Please take it to a lawyer. One other tip, don't take it to any lawyer. Take it to a lawyer who understands the home inspection world. Better still, take it to a lawyer who will be the one likely to defend you if you ever do have a claim. Lawyers are very good at throwing people under the bus, and you don't want the lawyer to say your inspection agreement is stupid. I can't defend you adequately based on this. If he wrote the agreement, then he's not going to be able to say that. So try to make sure that you have an inspection agreement that's been vetted by the lawyer who is likely to be the one representing you. And that may very well be the lawyer who works with your E&O insurance carrier, because there's usually a hand in glove relationship there. So simple, straightforward. These guys understand home inspections. They know the ropes. They know the pros and cons. They know all the tips and tricks and all the tripping up points. So they can take good care of you. And believe me, it's not the same all across North America. That's why I really don't want you to use ours. Ours works fine in our jurisdiction. I'm pretty sure the rules are going to be different where you are, because they're different in lots of places. Okay, here's another risk management tip that thinks about before the inspection. Please don't say on your brochures or on your website, we offer complete peace of mind. The truth is you don't. Be careful, look at your marketing, do not overpromise. I've had this come out in court that the lawyer for the plaintiff distributes to the court pages from your website or brochures with highlighted sections that indicate statements like this. The home inspection company misled my client, Your Worship. And that is a tough argument to win. So be careful with that. On the other side of the coin, manage expectations. I don't know that you need to put it on your website, but I'd really like you to include it in things like your confirmation emails, your inspection agreements, your report itself, things like a home inspection is a sampling exercise and will not identify all issues. There's all kinds of other language around that. That's a sample. The other thing you can do is offer specialty services and ancillary work. Now, you don't have to perform it yourself. You can outsource it to other people. But the fact that you offer this other stuff reinforces the point that that's not part of a home inspection. That's not what the home inspector is supposed to do. So things like mold, indoor air quality, sewer scans, radon, whatever, termites, thermal, infrared thermography, all that kind of stuff. If you offer that as an add-on, it's hard for people to say you should have done that as part of your inspection. Okay? Understand that people do not know what a home inspection should and should not include. If you ask 10 people on the street, should a home inspection include the alarm system of a house? They would all say yes, because they don't know, and they'd much rather that it did. The reality is it doesn't. We have to tell them that. Here's another way you can make it clear that your scope of work is restrictive. We offer a comprehensive inspection called a technical audit if our clients choose to take it. So we have some clients who keep asking question after question after question, do you do this? And this is before when they're booking the inspection. And our customer service people at some point will say, well, it doesn't sound to me like you want a home inspection. It sounds like you want a technical audit. We offer that too, and go look at this page on our website, and there's the blurb from our website. And notice that the fees start at $10,000. We've only done a few of them, but it's a team effort. We hire people to do it. It takes a number of weeks to do, and it's generally pretty invasive. And we're taking stuff apart, or our team is taking stuff apart, doing some destructive testing in some cases where there's reason to dig. So it's very different from a home inspection, but the point is it defines the home inspection as something that is not this. And all of that is very useful and helpful if push comes to shove down the road. So defining your scope of work, absolutely critical. You've got to be, you don't mind having your feet held to the fire, You just need the fireplace to be this big, not the entire universe. Limitation of liability or limit of liability. Should you have one in your inspection agreement or not? Again, two issues. One is your business philosophy. Some people find it's too onerous and they don't want to look like a jerk by putting it in. In some places, it's not allowed, not permitted. So you got to be careful. If you want to use it, you might not be able to. We have been on both sides of the fence on this one. Right now, we do it. And it's more defensible, I'm told, by the legal community, if instead of just limiting the inspection to your fee, you limit it to a reasonable number. So we limit it to the greater of our fee or $1,000. Now our average fee is $650 for an inspection. I don't know what yours is, but you can do whatever you want. You can ignore this altogether. You may not be able to use it, or if you choose to use it, you can do that. I have a colleague who does this, and although no one's taken him up on it, it's been very helpful for him as a deterrent. If they ask about the limit of liability being unfair, he says, well, we're happy to remove it, but the fee goes up. Or we can raise the limitation of liability for an additional fee. And they'll negotiate on that. And invariably, the people come back to saying that they'll accept the limitation of liability. So understand that that changes the risk perspective for the home inspection company, and so people can charge more for it. So I find that interesting. We don't do that, by the way, but it's a very thoughtful strategy. Here's the limitation of liability from our agreement, very similar to the standard one in the Horizon sample agreement, except for the fees that you have been charged for this inspection or $1,000, whichever is greater part. That's kind of a Carson Dunlop twist to it. So again, as always with all this stuff, you're welcome to use any of this stuff, but I would really encourage you not to use it without consulting a lawyer. We are not lawyers. We are dumb home inspectors. So please don't take anything you see in Horizon as representing a legal opinion. It's hard enough to focus on home inspection. I don't want to be in two professions at the same time. Here's another twist on the limit of liability. Also put in a time frame. Now, again, you may not be able to do that based on the jurisdiction you work in. And it's somewhat questionable, even in our jurisdiction, but we have decided to put in a 2-year time frame from the date of inspection to make a claim. And we don't get much objection to it, even from lawyers who sign our inspection agreements. Is it a bit of a deterrent if people have a problem and go look at the agreement after the fact? It might well be. I don't know that. I feel a little better doing it. One of the reasons that it came in here was it wasn't too long ago now. I'm going to say 2 years ago, we had a claim that was for $40,000, and it was for a buried oil tank or a possible buried oil tank. And it was raised from an inspection that we did 14 years previously. Now, 14 years ago in our jurisdiction, buried oil tanks weren't nearly the issue they are now. And so what did things look like 14 years ago? That's pretty tough to determine. So we said, you know, that's really unfair. And so we put in the 2-year time frame. We haven't had it tested at court. We haven't had anybody challenge it yet. Again, talk to a lawyer and get some sensible advice on it. I'm telling you what the wacko Alan Carson doesn't make it right. Okay. These ones are pretty much, in my mind, cast in concrete. I don't think you should deviate from these. I want you to get the contract signed before the inspection, and I really want you to get paid before the inspection. And one of the phrases we use in our confirmation email is, the appointment is confirmed or will be considered confirmed when the contract is accepted and the payment is processed. So the booking is not finalized until these people take care of this. And those of you who use Horizon regularly know that that can be integrated right into the confirmation email, and people just click the box, read the agreement, accept that, click the next box, they can pay online, and away you go. So it's the way business is conducted in 2020. Has anybody ever bought anything on Amazon? Do you pay after delivery or before? The world has moved to you pay up front before, and that's also true with home inspection. I think you should all do that. And what's percentage of the time do we get that? In both cases, the contract and payment were somewhat now over 95% of our inspections. It simplifies life so much. We don't chase stuff when somebody's copied down a credit card number wrong, or when a check bounces, or when there's a payment denied. All that gets taken care of ahead of time. The biggest advantage of that, quite frankly, may not be the payment. There may be a couple of other things to think about. That contract is so much more defendable if people had a chance to read it in the privacy of their own home and accept it then. When you provide it on site, it's likely to be challenged if there's a claim that the people did not have the opportunity to read it and make a sensible decision. The home inspection contingency period is short. They didn't have time to find a new home inspector by the time they showed up on site, and you presented them with this 4-page legal document. It might be argued that the contract gets thrown out. So be careful with that. The other thing is, what I love about it is, if you get the contract signed before the inspection, when you show up at the beginning of the inspection, you don't start the conversation with, oh, please sign this, it's all the stuff we don't do. That's not a great way to build a relationship to me. To me, it's much better to start with, hi, how are you doing? Congratulations. Tell me about your plans for the house. What are your concerns? What do you do for a living? How many people are going to be living in the house? Establish a relationship. And at the same token, when you get to the end of the inspection, it's so much easier just to summarize, shake their hand. Well, you can't shake their hand anymore because of COVID, but to summarize and make sure they understand, ask them any follow-on questions. Does this all make sense to you? And then part friends, instead of saying, oh, now can you dig into your wallet and pay me? That's all taken care of. So to me, it makes for a better opportunity to build a relationship with a client. And when we start to talk about complaints, I'm going to remind you how important that is. Okay. A very simple risk management tool, very easy thing to do. Those of you who use Horizon Marketer, as you know, you can set up an automated email reminder to the client and to the agent. You can make it 24 hours before the inspection. That's what we do. But I know a lot of people who do it 12 hours, 8 hours, 6 hours, 2 hours before the inspection, whatever works for you. And we send it to both the client and the agent. And it's amazing how often people thank you for the reminder, because we include the date and the time and the address and this. Oh yeah, so there's no, in our crazy city, we have some streets with very similar names, and we have street and avenue and boulevard, all with the same name at the beginning. So nice to be able to get that straight. Brian, we've got a little poll coming up again here. And this is a poll about email reminders to clients and email reminders to agents, and whether in fact you use Horizon Marketer at all. So Brian, can you go ahead and throw that one up?
All right, I'll get that launched here. Now this is a multi-selection poll, so there's going to be 5 choices on screen, and you can select whichever ones are applicable there, folks.
So you have to give people 10 minutes for this one, Brian?
Hopefully not. Well, we are getting a good response. The only unfortunate part is the lack of Horizon Marketer use. But obviously that could be a topic for another month, and get people into the habit of taking advantage of that and saving themselves some additional time every day. All right, let me just close this for you, sir, and give you the results.
Okay. All
right, so we had 51% of our audience vote. Thank you very much, folks, for doing that. And for the results, we had 59% of our response say yes to clients, 32 say no to clients, 39% to agents, 35 no to agents, and only 23% use Horizon Marketer. So by and large, we've got roughly an aggregate of 40% or so that send to clients and agents together, and very few people use Horizon Marketer at this point.
Okay, fair enough. Well, it's probably because Horizon Marketer is such an expensive add-on to Horizon, right, Brad?
Hey, free of
Wait a
charge,
minute.
just a little bit of time.
Oh, wait a minute. It's free. Okay. Yeah, one of these days we'll do one of these webinars on Horizon Marketer. Super powerful automated email marketing tool that roughly a quarter of our people use. It's goofy and it's sad, but time for me to move on. I'm so good at distracting myself. It's crazy. Okay, let's talk a little bit about how you can manage your risk during the inspection. Okay, I talked about the importance of the greeting the people and ending the inspection. To me, and by the way, we don't invite clients to attend, we encourage clients to attend. I've got a lot of colleagues in the States now who are telling clients not to attend or not to attend until the last half hour. And I understand it's easier to inspect without a client hanging on your shirt tails, but you know what? I think it's a relationship builder. I think you do a better job. I think it's better communication, and that's a little more work maybe, but I think it pays dividends over the long term. I think if you're going to have clients attend with you, you need to make sure you're courteous, patient, and caring. And that's one thing that I'm very comfortable about home inspectors with. We are maniacs with a mission by and large, and we generally tend to do everything we can for our clients and then some. So I think this is part of the DNA of a home inspector anyway. But the benefit on the back end is, and believe me, I'm not saying this because I think it's a cute saying. It's because it's what I've observed over a great many years. Friends don't sue friends. When they see how hard you worked getting up on the roof, into the attic, into the crawl space, pulling covers off things, the time you took, the explanations you gave, when they get an unpleasant surprise, they're more likely to call and ask for advice and questions than tear a strip off you. I think it's critical. I think we're losing it, by the way. As I look across North America, this trend to not having the client attend, I think is a bit of a slippery slope. Now, again, you're talking to an old dog and I don't do new tricks very well. You may have a very different philosophy. I absolutely get that. I understand. Again, I'm just telling you the way I see it. Okay, so we always ask them about what their plans are for the house, any concerns. We're careful not to say something on site, sugar-coated, and then something differently in the report. So I don't want to soft pedal it when I'm face to face and come down like a ton of bricks in the report. I know too many inspectors who do that. That's a recipe for trouble. Don't say anything that you're not prepared to put in the report. A lot of people do this with costs. We include ballpark cost estimates in the report. I understand most people in North America do not, and I'm okay with that. But to give somebody a nudge, wink, here's the cost verbally and not put it in writing, I think that can be a problem for you. Now, some old dogs tell me they get away with it all the time. God love you if you do. I think it's a bit risky, especially for the newer guys. So either do it or don't do it, but don't sort of do it unless you're really, really comfortable. During the inspection, I like to make it conversational. I like to stop and say, does that make sense? It's one of the great things about having the client there, and with COVID masks, it's a little harder to do, but to see that facial reaction of, are people getting the message? Are people overreacting? Are people glossing over? Is there information overload going on? You have to adjust your presentation based on your audience. It's part of the art of home inspection. Here's another point. When people say, are you going to be checking for termites? Instead of saying, I don't do termites, which makes it sound like you are the wrong home inspector that they hired because every other one does, a much better answer is to say, checking for termites is not part of a professional home inspection, but I can recommend you to somebody who does that, a specialist, if you will. Okay, just a little tip along the way. Okay, I'm going to say that given the internet and mobile phones and all that kind of stuff, research is so easy to do. Please don't guess. When you see something you're not sure about, the beautiful thing of a network and a community is you can reach out for help. and with texting and so on, and the ability to take a photo and send it to somebody real quick and get a second opinion, it's a really powerful thing. Don't step around things you don't understand. Perfectly okay, and this is harder for the new guys because they haven't seen it all yet. But whether you're new or whether you're old, perfectly okay to say, this is something you don't see every day. I'm going to get some additional information on it, and I'll give you the answer. People respect that, and people don't know what you should and shouldn't know. So don't feel like you have to know everything. It's not part of the job. We've been doing this a very long time, and do we see stuff we haven't seen before? Heck yeah, and that's okay. And just because you're newer and there might be more of it, it's still okay. It's way better than the alternative. On the other side of the coin, please don't show off. I don't care if you're an English major, this sentence does not belong in a home inspection report. The leachate from the apparently chronic efflorescence is evocative of invasive moisture ingress exacerbated by deleteriously delayed evaporation. What? I can't even believe I got all those words out. That makes no sense. That has no place in a home inspection report. We're in the communication business, not the obfuscation business or the intimidation business. Okay. Warn people things are going to go wrong. I think you may as well get ahead of the curve on this one and tell them right up front. Now, when you move into the house, you're going to find some stuff that we didn't talk about today. And let me remind you, we said this would be a sampling exercise. So we didn't pour over every brick and every shingle. We didn't move all the furniture to test every electrical receptacle. We tested one window per room, one door per room. We've done a representative sample to give you the overall condition of this house. The minutia, the details, they're going to come up and be little surprises for you. We like to call it the joy of home ownership. But it's going to happen. Please understand the scope of work. What we're doing is we're trying to look for the big stuff. We'll pick up the little stuff as we go looking for big, and we're happy to include that as a courtesy, but we're not doing an excruciatingly detailed 3-day, 24-hour inspection of your house because we're not charging you $17,000. That's the scope of work. On the other side of the coin, please remember that you are entitled to free telephone and email consulting for as long as you own the home. So this is not a one-time event. We are now your partner in this house. And as you go through things, you'll have contractors tell you things that are different than what's in the report. Please give us a call. Happy to talk to your contractor, happy to talk to you about it so that we can get you the best advice we possibly can. Okay, that you might have said is stupid and soapy and you don't care for it. That's fine. I'm okay with that. I just want to share with you what we do. Okay, after the inspection, still thinking of the whole risk management side of things. I'm going to give you 10 report writing tips. And if you've been with us on this journey, I've been talking about report writing for a number of the webinars. I'm going to give you 10 quick hits here. This is not, if you want to go back and watch the previous ones, I think they're all available anyway. So here we go, quick bullet points. Don't use words like acceptable, satisfactory, functioning as intended, etc. You don't know that that's true under all conditions. Possible concealed damage. Great words to use when you're seeing a somewhat spongy shower stall or damage to soffits that might be ice damming where the whole wall below might be damaged. Rot around a window. What's the wall look like underneath that inside? Keep descriptions short and generic. I do a whole thing on this. Don't put more in your descriptions than you need to. Don't describe it as cedar shingles just because they might be pressure treated pine and you might be wrong. And then you might be on the hook for a cedar roof. Remember, what you're getting paid for is your professional consulting, identifying things that affect the condition of the house and might affect a reasonable purchaser's decision to buy. Your role is really not an inventory clerk. And I know too many inspectors who are too happy to be an inventory clerk They do the easy inventory stuff and they forget to do the hard deductive reasoning consultant stuff. Explain any technical terms you use. I hate glossaries. Why would you make somebody go to the end of the report to explain what a swale is, or double tapping, or reverse polarity, or one of the other 25 words that we use that are going to confuse people? Deliver your report before you said you would. However long it takes you, tell people it'll take twice that long and over deliver. Under promise and over deliver. Been around for a long time, still makes great sense. Less is more. Please, bullet points rather than long narrative. We are not gifted technical writers. No home inspector I've ever met is a novelist, and they should not be writing creative paragraphs. They always contain mistakes. They're always poor communication. Worse than that, I know no human being who would rather read a paragraph than a couple of bullet points these days. I can't get my kids to read a whole sentence, never mind a paragraph. The world has changed. Maintenance tips at the end, get them out of the body of the report. They just confuse you. You're talking about some big functional condition problem, and then you're giving them tips about how often they should change the filter on the furnace or clean the gutters or whatever. Two different topics, folks. The things that apply to every house, bundle them and stick them at the end. Implications, why does stuff matter? What's the so what? A cracked pane of glass means one thing, a cracked heat exchanger, something completely different. Make sure that your clients can understand that. Get rid of the junk. Take all the stuff out that doesn't help your client. The weather, we can fight about this one for a while. Go back and look at some of the old webinars to see my position on that. Who attended the inspection, start and stop time, all that stuff. I think it's all clutter and it doesn't help your client. Do yourself a favor, read your last report and take every sentence and say, in what way does this help my client make his very important lifestyle and financial decision? You might be surprised at how much you find that does not help your client. And we have a little document called When Things Go Wrong. Here's a link to it. I invite you to include that in your reports. I think it's very powerful if it ever comes to having to respond to a complaint. I won't go into any details because we'd be here for 9 hours, not 90 minutes. Okay, so there's 10 report writing tips. We talked about the free consulting by email or phone forever. I think that's a substantial thing to do. Horizon Marketer can be your friend here, by the way, in a number of ways. A simple thank you, not a bad way to start. Offering those additional specialty services that might be important to them after they've made the decision to buy the house. They may not go for a sewer scan before they bought the house, but if you put in the report that the house is in a mature neighborhood and there is a giant maple tree in the front yard, and there might be some issues going on with that main drain going out to the street, and here's video sewer scan opportunity, that can all be programmed into Horizon Marketer and happen automatically for you. Lots of different ways to do it. Are you going to offer a home warranty, a guarantee? There's all kinds of them out there floating around. To be honest with you, most of them I don't like because they seem to be substantive and there are a whole bunch of weasel clauses in them. So I don't want to sell something or give something to a client that ends up disappointing them when they go to use it. So I'll leave it to you on that one. Listen 360. We spent the last presentation talking about it for an hour and a half. It's an amazing survey tool. We've been using it since 2012. There's over 4,500 testimonials on our website from clients, 1,400 from agents. Go look and you'll get the flavor of it. It's built on Net Promoter Score. They use the term promoters and detractors. I won't get into the details, but it's very powerful in getting ahead of complaints, which we'll talk about in a minute. If you're curious about Listen 360, it's dead cheap. It's a must-have in my opinion. A bunch of you who sat in signed up on it after the webinar last month. If you want to talk to Ariel about it, get signed up. There's his contact information, or you can just go info@discoverhorizon.com. Okay. Here's a funny philosophical thing, and I think it's probably fair to say that nobody wants to get a complaint. But I can tell you that when somebody complains to you instead of the world, that's a gift and they're doing you a favor. because it can do so much damage when they start to circulate it to the real estate agent, to their friends, to their network, and especially if it gets onto social media. So if you can take somebody who's unhappy and have them approach you and get it sorted out, and let me reassure you, the majority of the time people are unhappy is because of a misunderstanding. It's not because you screwed up. It's because they got it wrong. It's a misunderstanding. They didn't read the report. They didn't understand. Whatever. You would much rather get that nipped in the bud and then turned around. That's where Listen 360 is so valuable. Listen 360 is terrific because it's a one-question survey. It takes them less than 10 seconds to respond. If they're unhappy, pick up the phone and call them and ask them why. Detractors are people who give you a 0 to 6 out of 10. Promoters are people who give you a 9 or 10 out of 10. If somebody gives you a 0 to 6, you want to pick up the phone and find out why. It's an important thing to do. It's no one's favorite phone call. I appreciate that. It's an important phone call. Okay, let's move on to the fact that having done all the risk management stuff, if you're in business long enough, you're going to get a complaint. Okay. So I really, really want you to steel yourself against this and think of an opportunity rather than a pain in the butt and agony. We're going to spend the next few minutes looking at who complains, how the complaints come in, and then best practices for addressing them. So as I said, nobody wants complaints, but I sure don't want somebody bad-mouthing me or, God forbid, suing me either. So I want to respond quickly and effectively so I can turn those negatives into positives. Who might complain? Well, to be honest with you, most often it's the client. And frankly, let me go back to something I said before. Most often it's the client who did not attend the inspection. You don't have any rapport with them. You're not friends with them. You're not their trusted advisor. They didn't see how hard you worked for them, and you have no rapport with them. I'm going to give you a corollary to that rule, and that is that if the wife attended the inspection and you get a complaint about that address, it's probably coming from the husband and vice versa. People who do not attend the inspection do not have that connection to you and are more likely to attack you. It's why we encourage people to attend the inspection. Sometimes it's from a lawyer, and there's two different ways it might be from a lawyer. Sometimes it's out of the blue and you don't know anything about it and your client hasn't told you a darn thing. Part of the power of Listen 360, by the way, is you can nip these before they go to the lawyer. So sometimes people just go to a lawyer right out of the gate, assuming that you're going to try to blow them off. In other cases, the lawyer's letter comes as a last resort after you've either tried to resolve it with the client or tried to avoid resolving it with the client. So if the client reaches out to you and you stonewall him or ignore him or don't return his phone calls, you shouldn't be surprised when you get either a letter from a lawyer or you get served by the courts. Sometimes, and this is the rarest one, it'll be the agent who calls you representing the client. Now, understand that agent usually feels caught in the middle. This is not where they want to be. And they're taking care of the client because they got a commission from them and it's their duty. They really don't want to be in the conversation. In my opinion, the best thing you can do is thank them for bringing it up, asking for permission to reach out to the client directly. You call the client directly and then keep the agent in the loop as you move through whatever your conversations are with the client. But take the agent off the hook. Okay, how do complaints come in? Phone calls are still the most popular. Emails may be starting to overtake that. Listen 360 reviews are a great one. If you use it, it'll help you out so much because it'll be instead of the phone call or the email in a lot of ways, and you can get right on it instantly. And I do mean instantly. It might be a snail mail, it might be a letter, it might be a statement of claim from the courts, as I said. So 15 best practices now. I gave you 10 report writing tips. Now let's go into 15 best practices for how we're going to handle complaints. This one is so critical. It should be the first 14. Respond quickly. And I mean quickly. And I mean, don't avoid it. Don't think about it. Don't sit on it. Don't wait till you can pull the report out and review it. Don't do that. Call them back. Whether, by the way, this is all about phone calls from clients. At the end, I'm going to say, but if it was an email or a Listen 360 thing, follow exactly the same process. Somebody sends you an email, do not spend 2 days crafting a nasty email back to them. Don't do that. Pick up the phone and call them. If you get a letter, don't write a letter back. Pick up the phone and call them. Listen patiently. Listening with empathy, without taking responsibility, with not being defensive and not being aggressive. Listen. You are a professional consultant, right? Behave as a professional consultant. Even when the client is behaving unprofessionally and is being personally aggressive. Focus on the issues, not the people. Even when your clients don't have the decency to do that. It's a hard thing to do, really hard, but it's super important. The thank you thing comes next. That's what we talked about earlier. You know, this was a hard call to make. Let's see how we can get this result. They're not expecting that reaction. They're expecting you to be defensive, if not aggressive, deny. You just turn around and say, hey, we're on a team together. We're trying to get this resolved. Let's see how we can work together. It's so disarming. It's completely off-putting to them. And it's so sincere. And truth be told, we're going to get to that in a second. Okay, let's go stay in order because I get so excited I just rant and rave. So point 4, record the facts. Whatever they tell you, note it, write it down. But as you're writing it down, remind yourself, Alan said this will not be 100% accurate. Don't sweat it. I say that with all sincerity. It's never correct. It's never completely factual. It's never the whole story. Whatever they're telling you, by all means, write it down, keep track of it, record it, ideally in the callback section of your work order, which we'll talk about in a bit, but keep track of that. Next, be the consultant. Remember that even if they're railing on at you, it's because they're trying to prod you into action to solve their problem. What is really the stone in their shoe is the issue. They want their house fixed. They want their house working properly. They want their house to keep them warm, safe, and dry. The beating you up is only a means to an end. They're really not after you personally. They don't even know you that well. So what they really want is the issue fixed. And if you keep dragging the conversation back to the issue and not getting involved with the people, that's going to work way better for you. You start to ask questions like a consultant. Well, and you can be empathetic and say, oh my gosh, that sounds like a very nasty surprise. Let me ask a couple of questions. Has anything changed in the home since we did the inspection? Well, of course things have changed. They've moved, the old people have moved out, somebody new moved out, all kinds of things have changed. But you're really looking for things like, did they replace the windows, change the furnace, do whatever? Ask open-ended questions. And then, who discovered the issue? And can you tell me how it was discovered? How did this come up? And then when did it come up? And we'll get into a little bit more of why those questions matter down the road a little bit. But we're trying to figure out the scenario and exactly what happened. And we're looking for things that allow us to say, well, then I think you would agree we couldn't possibly have predicted this or seen this or identified this. But be a little bit non-aggressive, non-defensive, just the facts, ma'am, so to speak. Have they done any repairs to the problem yet? They won't remember that in the inspection agreement, there's a clause that says if they go ahead and make repairs before you have a chance to investigate, they don't have a claim. Okay? If you use our inspection agreement or one that uses some of the same stuff, that's in there. So they have to give you time to go out. They can't hide the evidence and then point the finger at you after the fact. That's not fair. And the courts, by the way, take that view as well. So sometimes a really good question is, and depending on how things go, remember I said there's not a playbook for this that you can apply every time? Sometimes the question, what can I do to help, is the right question because the people are kind of telling the story and their voice is kind of trailing off and they're and this and that. And then they get into, and you know, my kid's starting a new school and he hates the new school, and the walk to the bus stop is a lot longer than we thought it was going to be, and the local grocery store isn't as good as the one that we, and you're getting all the problems that people have when they move into a new house. And so if the conversation and the complaint degrades into general moaning about their new circumstance, sometimes the right question is, how can I help? And sometimes they just want some advice to fix the problem. Now, if they've already told you they want $20,000 from you to fix the problem, that's not the right question. But sometimes it is the right question. You've got to play that one a little bit by ear. Generally speaking, after you've asked the questions, you've heard things, and by the way, the longer the conversation goes on, generally the more calm these people get. The more engaged you are with finding a solution, the more they realize you're not going to hang up the phone and make their life even worse. Next step would be to don't draw any conclusions, don't come to any rash, impulsive decisions based on this phone call. Say, let me pull the report and get back to you in 4 hours or the next day or whatever. Whatever you tell them you're going to get back to them in, get back to them in half that time, not twice that time. You don't want to poke them and make them madder. You want to continue to surprise them with how responsive you are. You would not believe how far that goes. And I know this from experience, not once, not twice, but a bunch of times. It doesn't have to be personal until you either avoid them and duck your head in the sand, or you get aggressive and you attack them, okay? And I know some people who love to attack them, and I've got lots of stories about that. You're welcome to try that strategy. I don't think it's the right strategy. Okay, moving on. So you review the report. Even if you think you know on the phone, don't say anything. Check your report, check your unused photos. That's another great thing about Horizon. All the extra photos that you took that you didn't put in the report, sometimes those are quite helpful. This is a really critical time. You don't want to misspeak. You don't want to go off half-cocked. You don't want to be wrong. You want to be crystal clear and you want to be 100% right. And again, always focused on the issue, not the people. Never start a sentence, well, you did this or you didn't do that. Even if you have to say it, well, the recommendation that we said about cleaning the gutters to keep the basement from flooding apparently hasn't been completed yet. I'm sure that once those gutters are clean and that roof water runoff is contained and diverted, then your basement moisture problems will disappear. So see how I tried to keep it about the issue, not about the person. You moron, you didn't clean the gutters the way we told you to. What are you, stupid? What did you expect? Of course your basement's going to leak, you idiot. That's not the conversation. Okay, evaluate the complaint. And I break them down into 3 categories. Are they black, are they white, or are they gray? And it's a surprising number that are white, by the way. That's the good news. So, is there a complaint in the report? Sounds like a stupid question. It's amazing. People don't read the reports. They don't understand it. They haven't gone back and gone through the report or haven't gone through it properly. So in a lot of cases, the defects in black and white in the report, that's easy. What about if it's out of scope? What if it's something that's not included in the inspection? Then you go back to your inspection agreement, your scope of work, your standards of practice, and you remind them that you worked really hard within your window of responsibility and within your scope of work, but you can't be all things to all people. And this is not, and again, don't say this is not something that we do. Say this is not part of the scope of a professional home inspection. So it's the profession that doesn't do it. It's not you that doesn't do it. Okay? What about when it's in scope and it's something you would normally inspect, but it wasn't visible? Okay? The roof was completely covered with snow. Oh my gosh, the roof's worn out. Well, we told you that the roof was covered with snow and it wasn't visible. Or they start to renovate, they tear stuff apart, they find some buried knob and tube wiring, some buried, I don't know, lead waste plumbing, all kinds of stuff. Rotted joists, sill plates, whatever. They tear down a finished basement ceiling and find the beams are poorly supported, are rotted, whatever. All quite true, but of course not something that we could have commented on. So those are the white ones to me. And to me, if it's white, I think you handle it over the phone. You say, here's the situation. It was in the report. It's not something that a home inspector does. Or, yes, I understand you have this problem and you've sent me this terrific photograph, but of course the drywall's all been removed. So of course we can see what was not visible during the inspection. So that generally goes fairly well. Now, sometimes it's also pretty clear, but it's pretty black. So if it's a clear mess, and these are pretty rare, but if you look at it, you see it. And by the way, if it's black, before you concede defeat, understand it's only black if their story is 100% right. And remember, I told you their story is never 100% right. So if it looks like a clear mess and it looks like it was in scope and visible and you just flat out missed it, you need to arrange a revisit. Do not fold like a cheap tent. Be polite, be professional, do not be accusatory, do not be defensive. Just say, okay, our next step is to arrange a revisit for us to come out and have a look at it. And I said us, not I, and we'll talk about why I said that in a minute. Now, the other possibility is the gray. And these are a relatively small number, but they're the trickiest to handle because it's possible you were wrong, but you're not sure. Meaning that, yeah, there's clearly a problem here now, but I wonder if it was like that 90 days ago or 6 months ago when we did the inspection. I'm not sure that it was. If you've got a photo showing that it wasn't like that, that's terrific, but often you don't. And so sometimes you'll find yourself lying in bed wishing you could fall asleep saying, did I really walk by that? Did I really miss that? Or was it just not there? Or not visible? Was there storage in front of it? Whatever. So the gray ones are the tricky ones. Another gray one is it's in the report, but it's not really very clear from the report. You look back on it and say, gosh, I wish I had said that better. I wish I had been more emphatic about that. Or I wish I had said, here's the action you need to take instead of just monitor. By the way, monitor is a bit of a dangerous thing to say. So if it's black or you think it's black, or if it's gray, we're going to arrange a revisit. But before we do that, I have a couple of other things to say. I've always got a couple of other things to say. So we've been talking about if the phone rings and here's the conversation you have, and I touched on this earlier. If it's an email or a letter or a review from Listen 360 or another survey tool, and whether it's from a client or an agent, doesn't matter. I still want you to phone them. I still want you to call them back. Don't email, don't write back, and then go through exactly the same 15 steps we just talked about, okay? If it's an agent calling or emailing, here's what I like to do, and I touched on this earlier. Call the agent, thank them for reaching out and letting you know, tell them that you'd love to talk to the client directly, and don't tell them that we'd like to take you off the hook, but that's really what you're doing, and then promise to keep them in the loop through the process and do that. Don't leave the agent out. If the agent started the dance, you want to finish the dance with the agent. Okay, if it's a letter or an email from a lawyer, I'm going to say be careful. Unless you've played this game before, you might want to reach out to your E&O broker, your errors and omissions insurance broker. I say broker, not insurer. Why do I say that? Because a broker can give you good advice, and when you tell a broker about a problem, it does not automatically become a claim. The broker can tell you whether it should be a claim or not. If you go straight to the insurer, it pretty much always becomes a claim, and then you're in the books, and then you're paying deductible, or then your premium is going to be effective. Your broker is your friend on this one. If the lawyer is not doing a specific demand for funds, and by the way, that demand for funds is a trigger that you should go and talk to your insurance company. If they say you owe us $10,000, you probably want to go talk to your insurance company. If it's just you guys did this and we expect you to make it right, and you're comfortable in your own skin, you can call the lawyer. And the only thing I want you to say to the lawyer is, do you mind if I call the client directly and see if we can resolve this? And let me tell you, a lot of lawyers really like that. And let me tell you why. Because the lawyers very often have a dilemma. Actually, they usually have several. So the lawyer often doesn't know much about home inspection and home inspection law. They won't be familiar with the scope of work or the standards of practice. They probably haven't seen the house. They probably haven't seen the problem. They probably have not seen your report. And they almost certainly have not seen your agreement, because an unhappy homeowner is not going to show them all that stuff. They're just going to tell them how their house has a problem and the home inspector didn't find it. So the lawyer's dilemma gets worse. So he's only hearing one side of the story, the client's story. And I mentioned to you before, it's almost always wrong. It's almost always skewed. The reality is lawyers know that. When they get somebody unhappy calling them, they always know there's another side to the story, but they're not allowed to let on. They just have to listen to their client and take their money and say, yeah, let me help you out. What often happens is it's a lawyer who doesn't specialize in this kind of thing at all, but it's doing a favor for a friend or a relative. So the client is a friend of his, the friend's got a lawyer who's a buddy, and so he reaches out to the lawyer to help him out. So the lawyer, because he's a good friend, helps out. Now, chances are the lawyer's not getting paid for this, or not getting paid very much. He's out of his depth because he's not dealing with home inspection complaints on a regular basis and doesn't know anything about them. And he's not where he wants to be, or she's not where she wants to be. So to speak to the lawyer and say, do you mind if I speak to the client? The lawyer's usually thinking, oh, please do. And if you can get them, if you can either pay them or calm them down or make them happy or get me out of this spot, that'd be great. They'll never say that to you, but that's often what they're thinking. And by the way, I didn't make this up. Lawyers tell me this, okay? This is not me being creative. This is 42 years of experience telling you what we've seen over the years. And I've gotten to know lawyers who deal with home inspection claims. And this is what actually happens. Here's the strategy that I want you to think about. Some inspectors say, when a client calls and complains, put it in writing, send it to me. Pros and cons to that, folks. Client has to take a clear position. That's a good thing, right? So that's a pro. They might calm down. That'd be terrific. You buy some time to think about it, research, or ignore it. That's a good thing. On the other side of the coin, when you tell them to put it in writing, to me, that's confrontational. Now you've said, okay, you go to your corner, I'll go to my corner, and we'll come out swinging. I don't think there's much chance of a quick, friendly resolution at that point. I think they're likely to get a little more angry because you're telling them to go away and do some work and prove it. They might really quickly hand things over to a lawyer or go to media. And when I say media, I might mean newspaper, radio, the consumer advocacy groups, or social media, or both. So it's a slippery slope, in my opinion, to say put it in writing, but it's your call. You do what you want. We don't do it. Here's the big picture. A lot of home inspectors that I know say, yeah, I don't really want to win the battle. I want to win the war. And I don't even want to win the war. I don't want war. I want peace. I want that client to become an advocate, a promoter, a friend. So I don't want to win. I want us both to be happy. Pollyanna, maybe, but I'll tell you what, it works. When do you send to the insurance broker? I touched on this, but I want to hammer it home because it's important. If the letter includes a demand for money, then you take it to your insurance broker, not your insurance company. If it's a lawsuit, same thing. The broker can provide guidance and tell you what to do next, and that can be helpful, and it's also not binding. Once you take it to the insurer, it's kind of out of your hands. The other thing that's important is never deny wrongdoing to the client, even if it's black and white and you're on the black side, because the insurer might defend it by something that you didn't think about. And if you have already admitted guilt, the insurer may not be able to defend the case. And remember, they're not defending you, it's their money. They're defending it. They don't want to pay their money. And what happens is, if you have compromised their ability to defend themselves, the insurer may decide they're not going to defend you and not pay the claim. So, as wrong as you might be, if there's any chance that this is going to insurance, do not admit that you did it wrong. Okay? You can be empathetic and polite and so on and say, yeah, we're going to turn this over to our insurance. Do not say, yeah, clearly I screwed up, because that can compromise the insurance company's position. Okay. I hate home inspectors who play amateur lawyer, and I know some of them who do it quite enthusiastically. So phrases like without prejudice, contributory negligence, duty to mitigate, betterments, cognos, spoliation. You know what? Don't speak a language you're not prepared to speak. You're going to get killed. So all these phrases mean something, but I don't want you guys wandering down this road. Here's a pretty obvious one. I want you to document everything. And I do mean everything. I don't know how many of you have ever noticed this, but inside Horizon, in the work order, on the client information panel, there's a little box on the right side called callback, and there's a little red arrow pointing to it here. And if you click on that, there's a long screen. This is only the top quarter of the screen, and there's tons of boxes to fill out, and you can keep track of everything over time in here. And it's one place. One thing I love about Horizon is everything's in one spot. Your work order, your report, your spare photos, your business reports, your callback notices. They're all in one place. You can't lose them. They're stored in the cloud. They're forever. There you go. So this callback document is really handy, and it's private. It's in the work order. It's only for you to see. What's really nice is, I don't know how many of you ever go into profile and how many of you ever go into the exporting data section, but you can export any or all fields from your work order. And for this, you can just select the fields from the callback notice, which are all of these highlighted in yellow, and you can pick a date range, and you can say, how many complaints have I had over the last 12 months or over the last 3 years, and how much have they cost me? Because included in here is any payments that you make. So it's a really good yardstick, and this gets exported to Excel, so you can keep track of it and you can know exactly how you stand. This applies to tons of things in Horizon on the work order, but in this case, I'm just focusing on the callback notice. So anything that goes into the callback notice, you can pull out and it'll be there. Okay, there's another thing. When somebody sends you an invoice from a contractor who fixed this problem, or photos of the issue, or people mail you stuff, and it might be a letter, it might be an email, it might be a claim. You can store all that stuff in Horizon, and not everybody knows this. For the report that you've already sent out, if you go back into the report, go to Report Publishing and click on Edit Appendix. Did you guys know that you can go into Edit Appendix and hit Choose File and go pick whatever you want, whether it's a letter or photos or whatever, and upload those. This is a picture of a rusted chimney that goes in. And the default position down below is Appears in PDF Report. If you click on Appears in PDF Report, it goes private. So going private means those documents are now attached to the report, but a client never sees them. Even if you send the report to them again, even if they go in and reopen it, they're never going to see these. So terrific repository for any documents that you want to keep that you don't want your clients to see. Okay, let's go out and do a revisit. That'll be fun, right? Well, maybe not. Anyway, if you're going to do a revisit, if you're a multi-inspector firm, the manager goes out and the inspector. More typically, if you're a sole proprietor and you are the inspector, do yourself a huge favor, bring a colleague. Ask somebody to come with you. Remember what I said about when it's involving you, you get all personal and emotional and your judgment and your vision get clouded? Your colleague's going to be way more sanguine about it. They're going to be way more relaxed. They're going to be way more logical and professional. So bring somebody that you know and trust, another home inspector, not a friend, but another home inspector who might also be a friend. If they have a contractor who is the one who initiated the complaint, try to have their contractor on site as well. I know, it's intimidating. Don't be intimidated. Don't be intimidated. These guys are specialists. They might know more than you about the given topic, but that's an excellent opportunity for you to remind them that you're a generalist. Just like they may be the heart surgeon, but you're the family doctor. You have broad knowledge across many systems, but it's not as deep as someone who's a specialist. Okay. Here's another reason that a revisit is a super thing to do. I talk about the hardness scale, and the hardness scale goes like this. It's really easy to be a jerk to somebody in writing over an email. You see it all the time. You see it in the stupid comments under articles and postings on the web and YouTube. People are so nasty in those written things. It's a little harder to be nasty over the phone, but the hardest is to be nasty to somebody face to face. Human nature usually reins us in, and we are more courteous when we're standing looking at somebody than we are writing them an email. It's a sad commentary on the human condition, happens to be true. So one good reason to be there is to make it hard for people to talk badly to you or about you. Secondly, and that's why, by the way, the manager shouldn't go. If it's a multi-inspector firm, the actual inspector should go too. So the client doesn't throw the inspector under the bus and say, he was only here for 25 minutes. He was chewing gum. He was on the phone. He did this, he did that. Not, you know, none of that's true. But if the inspector is there, they won't say that. It gives the inspector a chance to refresh their memory. He may remember, well, wasn't there a big wardrobe here? We're in the dining room. Wasn't there a big china cabinet? Or, you know, and if he's got the photo to back it up, it's a really good question to ask. You get to see what's really going on, and you get to see all the things they didn't tell you over the phone. And even if they sent you photos, you'll see things they didn't include in the photos. I really want you to be there. We talked about this already. Hardness scale. We talked about the remember, seeing conditions, especially the ones they didn't tell you. Here's the other part of it. I'd really like you to talk to both homeowners, and it's okay if they're at separate times. In fact, it's better if they're at separate times, because their stories are often different. And again, remember I said if the one attended the inspection, the other one didn't, the guy who's more unhappy with you is likely to be the guy you've never met before. So meeting them and having them see how professional and calm you are actually goes a long way. And the fact that you responded quickly and you got out there quickly, that you're clearly not running away from this. I mean, that does so much good. I can't emphasize that enough. So take lots of notes, take photos. By the way, don't use any tools you didn't use on the inspection. So your trusty thermal camera, if that was not used during the inspection, don't pull it out now, because they're going to say, well, why didn't you use that on the inspection? Then you would have found the all the mold behind the drywall in the basement. Don't do that to yourself. So depending on the circumstances and what you're seeing, and this is where you've got to be a little bit nimble, a little bit agile, think on your feet, ask lots of questions, always politely, never defensively, never aggressively. But you really need to get to the bottom of it. The when the issue was found, how it was found, anything changed in the house. I know you asked these questions on the phone, ask them again on site. You need to get the start, and you'll be surprised how often the answers are different. Engage with the contractor. Give him credit for being this, well, you're the expert here on whatever this is, whatever system. So make sure that you know, make sure they know that you consider them as the expert and that you're the generalist. And it's a great time to say, yeah, we're just like the goofball family doctor. We're kind of we look at everything at a more superficial level. than the specialist in every field. So of course you're going to tell me more about this than I know. And by the way, chances are that's not true. But you want to give them credit because you don't want to get their back up either. You want them to kind of puff their chest out a little bit and be the all-knowing. And so you can start to ask about, so what exactly was your scope of work? What's this project all about? And then ask him how he found it, how he discovered it. And very often it's the contractor raises the issue and said, the stupid home inspector should have told you about this. One of the interesting things that we find very often is that when he starts to tell you the story, you realize that he discovered it after he was tearing stuff apart. And so you want to be really clear about that. And if he tells you that, then you say, so you didn't include this issue in your original quote to do this work? No, I didn't. And I said, so you found it when you removed this drywall? Yeah. So I said, well, I guess we were both kind of fooled by this because neither one of us could have seen this because it wasn't visible. Oh, I guess that's right. Well, then it would seem to me that any home inspector in the world couldn't have picked this up because there simply wasn't any evidence of it. Am I reading that correctly? Is that fair? And if the contractor's talked himself into this corner, which they often do, then he can't do anything except agree. And then the conversation's pretty much over, except how can we help you get through this? Now you take on the consultant's role and you solve the problem with them, not for them, but with them, and not on your nickel, on their nickel. So when you're seeing stuff that's wrong and you're asking yourself, how did I miss this? The odds still are that you didn't miss it. So you need to be digging deep into why did you not pick this up? Was it really there? Was it observable? Was there something concealing it? Was it an intermittent problem? You need to ask yourself all those questions. And then I want you to focus on two different areas. One is think about the problem and solution from a nuts and bolts standpoint. What's wrong here with this house and how do we get it solved? Don't speak these things. I just want you to think this through. And it's better if you can do it when you're still on site because you may, as you start to go through that process, you may come up with additional questions. It's why it's great to have two people out there because one can be thinking more about this. And actually, it's the person who's not being attacked who probably will do a better job on this solution first thinking. And then you ask yourself quietly and mentally, did I really do a good job here? Did I miss something? And what would others say? What would a judge say? Knowing if everybody knew everything there was to know, what would a third party think? And the acid test is always, would a competent home inspector operating under exactly the same circumstances I was at the inspection, not at the revisit, at the time of the inspection, have found the same issue? Okay, that's a really important question to ask yourself. And you may not have an answer when you leave the property. If, on the other hand, you find that, in fact, it was not as described over the phone, which is almost always the case, and in fact, this issue was covered in the report or was not part of a home inspection, couldn't possibly have foreseen, then you say, yeah, clearly we could not have told you about this, but let's see how we can work together to get you some help getting it fixed. Does that make sense? And maybe recommending a contractor if they haven't engaged one yet, sending them to a consultant, sending them to an association, a website, giving them some direction. If you give people something tangible to take away, to go do, that is very helpful. Saying it's not my problem and walking away leads to having two bullet holes stared into your back. Okay? You want to be the professional, helpful consultant. Again, if it's gray, don't decide on the spot. Tell them that you'll get back to them. Tell them when you're going to get back to them. And then, as always, get back to them before you said you would. Okay, home stretch. Brian, we have to do a poll. What are we doing a poll about? I can't even remember.
Let me pull it up here. Is this responding to someone? A complaint, right? Well, this is actually twofold. So we're going to do the poll, and then that will segue into the handout, if you recall. So we'll first talk about the poll. Give me 1 second here, folks. And the poll is, as I launch it, do you currently have a complaint resolution process? So if you'd be so kind as to let us know. And the three, just so you're aware, Alan, because you can't see it, we have yes, yes, but it could be better, or simply no. We'll give it another 10 seconds to see what we get. All right, so we've had over 50% of our audience vote, and let us share the results here. So 15%, so an underwhelming percent said yes, which is obviously good for improvement, either here, which is fantastic. 26% yes, it could be better, and 58% said no. So, you know what? I think you're going to be able to give a lot of inspiration to people tonight, Alan. Back to you.
All right, good stuff. And by the way, no surprise there, and no need to feel inadequate. Most of us would rather not think about complaints most of the time.
Alan, sorry, didn't mean to pass that off to you. If everyone, I don't know if you want to mention it now or not, but there's the handout about what you're just talking about resolving the complaints. So I don't know if you want to mention that, and it's in the control panel. Sorry.
Yes, that Word document there on complaints. It's a form you can use when you're out on site. Feel free to download it, use it if you like, change it if you like, or throw it out if you don't like it. Doesn't matter. Sorry, thank you, Brian. I'm always looking ahead, sometimes to my detriment. Okay. So when you leave the revisit, I'd like you to consult with your colleague, because I hope you took one with you, and get their opinion. You're going to have a good conversation. You might have to buy them a cup of coffee or maybe even a beer or something. And ask them to be absolutely straightforward. Would you have found this? Did I make a mistake? And come to a yes or no on that, and then figure out what your next steps are. If you didn't make a mistake, you're going to have to go back and explain why again. There may or may not be a receptive audience to that. If there's a fight, there's a fight, and you may have to turn it over to your insurer, even if you were dead right, but the client feels you were wrong and they want to pursue it. That sometimes happens. Sometimes you may decide to make a modest offer and hope that that will get them on side and they'll feel well treated. If you did do something wrong, you have some choices. Hand it to the insurance company, pay to resolve the issue, or partly resolve the issue. And you could also just flat out deny responsibility and hope it goes away, which is almost akin to ignoring it. And I'm going to not recommend the deny responsibility or ignoring it strategy. Okay, before you decide, here are some issues to look at. Is there shared responsibility? Did the seller conceal something? Did a contractor screw up? Is there a manufacturer's warranty that might apply? Does homeowners insurance cover this issue? Is there a home warranty or a service contract that might address it? Is there betterment going on? So the client at the end of the day should be in the same position as you described them to be in when you wrote the report. So let's say the furnace failed and they want you to replace the furnace. But you said the furnace was 15 years old and probably had 5 years of life left in it. So they should end up with a 15-year-old furnace to be in exactly the position you told them. So they should not get a new furnace. They should get a quarter of a new furnace if the furnace lasts 20 years and you told them it was 15 years old. Might be a better argument for a lawyer to have with them. But lawyers understand this concept of betterment. Consequential loss. So if the roof leaks and destroys a $20,000 piece of furniture, the furniture is generally speaking not your problem, not your responsibility. Very often the homeowner's insurance will cover that, but they will try and ask you to take responsibility for it in a lot of cases. So that also ties into a duty to mitigate. So if there's a wet basement problem and it's a slow, chronic, or ongoing problem, and they don't lift stuff off the floor, that means they didn't do what they were required to do. So the law requires the homeowner to try to mitigate their loss and do the sensible things to protect the home and its contents. Did you have time to investigate, or did they just go ahead and fix it? Excuse me. Again, we include this right in our contract, that you have to have time to go out and have a look at it before they fix it. Because if they cover up the evidence, who knows what the heck the truth was. So it's time for you to make up your mind. So was this a problem in scope that was visible at the inspection? Maybe the answer is yes. So now I want you to think about, look at it from the client's perspective, but don't get drawn into the client's perspective. Stay objective. What would a competent inspector have done and seen and said? What would a judge likely say? Tough questions. Before you have the resolution conversation with them, I want you to do this. If you're going to go back and talk to them, now you may just say, I'm going to hand this over to my insurer, or we're not going to take any responsibility, or on your own. But if you want to go back and have a resolution conversation, I need you to predetermine what you think is fair. What are you prepared to pay them, if anything? A fee refund, $1,000, $10,000, $50,000, whatever it is, pick a number that you're comfortable with. Because then I want you to talk to the client and say, you know, it's not clear here whether there was something that I could have done that I didn't do. And again, you're not going to admit liability. And what you're going to say is you're going to ask them what they think is fair under the circumstances. Don't ask them what they want, and don't ask them what would make them happy. Ask them what they think is fair. And they may surprise you. If the number's lower than what you had budgeted, you're probably going to say yes. If it's higher, you're going to have to make a decision. If you come to an agreement, no matter what, even if it's only a fee release, I want you to get a full and final release, and I don't want you writing it. I want your lawyer writing it. Okay. If you can't agree on what's fair, then I think you agree to disagree. You leave, you give it some more thought. You might change your mind. If not, you're going to turn it over to your insurer. You're going to let them know that you did that, and you're not going to slam any doors. And all through the process, you're not going to admit fault. So let me give you one little last twist, and that is, would you ever pay a client for a problem, even if it's not your fault? Sometimes we are right, or almost certainly right. We're not quite positive, but we pay anyway. And sometimes it's a fee refund, sometimes it's $1,000, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's $5,000, sometimes it's $10,000. Because our relationships are important, and our brand and our name are important, and because we consider it marketing. And if it keeps a valuable agent who gives us 20 inspections a year in our corner instead of throwing us under the bus, I might make that as a marketing investment and get a pretty good return on that investment. Because the perception is reality. If you're right, but nobody else can see all the complicated reasons why you're right, and other home inspectors can see it, but the average person can't, people are going to think you were wrong. And if you try and step away from the problem, you're going to look like you were running away. So it's wonderful to be right, but if others don't perceive you to be right, it's really bad for your business. Now, you might be prepared to live with that, but just understand the risk you're taking. So if you call it marketing, it's a little less painful. So a lot of inspectors pay for advertising, marketing, whatever. They hate paying claims, but they will pay for advertising. So here's something that some of my colleagues do. They set an annual marketing budget allowed for claims of 2% of sales. So if you had a $400 inspection, you're going to take $20 and put it in your claims budget. Okay. And then you've got something available, and you can use it to pay either the legitimate claims or the frivolous claims to turn detractors into promoters. Okay, thank you, folks. I can't believe you stuck with me this whole time. I so appreciate your patience. I hope you don't have to use what we've talked about here very often, but it sure is nice to have it in your pocket. So hopefully this is a rainy day umbrella and you don't need the umbrella very often. Okay. Next month, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about marketing and pricing, 10 ways to build your business. That should be fun and definitely a more positive discussion than the one tonight. So that is going to be October 21st. And Brian, I'm going to trust that you don't have any questions for me. Is that right?
Oh, we have a few there, Alan. We definitely do have a few there. I have some earmarked, but just before anyone signs off or anything, if you give me a second, Alan, I do apologize. I'm going to steal the screen. So, folks, we've been hosting these webinars for several months now in succession, and we love to see repeat attendees. We love to see everyone growing and learning from it. And we never ask anything from you. And of course, we don't intend to. We want to share our knowledge and insights. But the one thing that I would really love, especially for Horizon users that have been with us for some time, we're really trying to build our Google review presence. And if you have just a minute to share, it would be fantastic if you take some time to go on to Google, type Horizon Inspection Software, and just give us a review, your feedback, your insights, how you enjoy the software. It would mean a tremendous amount to us. And before I get into Q&A, I just wanted to mention that. Sorry to do a little bit of shameless self-promotion to Horizon there, folks. But if you do have the time, folks, we would certainly love that. And Alan, I'm going to put it back to you for that slide about next month, and we'll jump into our Q&A.
All righty. Thanks, Brian.
All right. So if you just want to share your screen there, Alan, for me, do me.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the button. There we go.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right. So Chris, first question here. For new inspectors, are insurance premiums higher, or is it a standard rate at the start?
It's a good question. I don't know the answer. It used to be that it was the same all the way across the board. It's been so long that I deal with one insurance company, and because we have a broader set of business, including education and Horizon and commercial inspections, we have a different insurance program than most home inspectors. So I don't have a terrific answer for you. I don't think there is a new inspector premium penalty. But if you talk to, I don't know if you're in Canada or the US, there are different insurance carriers, but if you talk to 2 or 3, you'll get a very quick answer on that. I know in the States, there's at least one insurance carrier who offers a per inspection premium. So you can pay a given premium for each inspection you do that sometimes is appealing to new inspectors. So you don't have to pay. An insurance premium might be $2,000, $3,000, $3,500. It depends. The insurance market goes up and down in cycles. And so premiums tend to fluctuate. And when insurance companies are doing well, premiums go down. They lower the premiums to win the business and be competitive. And then if their claim ratio goes up and their experience is bad, then they will raise their premiums back up. So insurance cycles kind of go up and down, and it depends where you are in the cycle. But I would say $2,000 to $4,000 is kind of the range for a typical sole proprietor E&O insurance. And again, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer, but I don't know that there is a premium penalty for new inspectors.
Thank you, Alan. We have another Chris. We got actually several Chris's in attendance today with questions. And this Chris has a question. So with regard, or in the earlier slides, you're talking about your major lawsuit, right? The big issue. So why did you ultimately pay them off? Didn't make a mistake?
Because our lawyers advised us that it would be a $100,000 lawsuit.
So just basically the better balance of financials?
Yeah, it was a financial decision, absolutely. Understand that when the client is a lawyer, and the client, in this case, the client was a lawyer who owned his own law firm with a whole bunch of people. So his cost to take us to court was going to be negligible. And he had a reputation, we looked him up, and at a personal level, he had a reputation for being litigious, and I'm not going to say frivolous, but he would kind of sue people at the drop of a hat. And some would say that's taking advantage of position. The reality was, and we did ask our lawyer, what's the thing? So the lawyer said, you're further ahead to make the settlement and have and we had a problem. Part of the story was even more complicated because we had a problem with our insurance company there. They had screwed something up. So we had a problem with our E&O insurer that wasn't our making either, but we were kind of getting stuck in that squeeze. So we paid, I think the way I told you the story, we paid up front and then the insurance company paid us back. That was a bit of a fight to get the money from the insurance company too. But the reality was the $30,000 in legal fees were starting to go through the roof, and the $60,000 payment was less than what the lawyers told us the minimum cost would be to go through trial with this guy. So sad story, but fortunately it was about 15 years ago now, but it definitely left a mark.
Understandably so. Mukesh, and I apologize if I mispronounced that, asked, so tell me, what's the easy explanation for that sentence? But late what's the easy explanation for that sentence? I can't even begin to pronounce the verbose, the leche something effervescence talking about.
Oh, what was the inspector trying to say?
Yeah.
Is that, yeah, he was trying to say there's efflorescence on the foundation wall. That is the result of, it was typical efflorescence, and it was just moisture moves through the wall. The way efflorescence develops is that as moisture moves through the wall, it evaporates the salts in the concrete and the mortar. And then when the water gets to the surface, and he used the word evaporation in there, so the water has absorbed the salts. When the water evaporates off the surface on the interior of the foundation wall, the basement wall or crawl space, it leaves those salts behind because the liquid water turns to vapor, but the salts can't go with them. So the salts crystallize as white solid crystals, and that's what he was talking about. So garden variety efflorescence on a foundation wall, but he took it upon himself to give it some $5 explanation that no one understood, including the average home inspector. A complete and total ego trip that doesn't mean anything to anybody.
Thank you. Jim, how do you handle realtors that are abusive to you, name calling and things? Do you complain to them about it? Do you stop taking their business? What's your course of action?
Yeah, we avoid them. Whenever they call, and fortunately, let me just be clear, there are real estate agents like that, but there are doctors like that, lawyers like that, home inspectors like that, garage mechanics like that. So people love to, in the home inspection profession, people love to beat up realtors. There are certainly some bad ones. Now, this is going to be easy advice from me because we've been around a long time and we're reasonably comfortable. But we are quite happy not to work with real estate agents like that. And quite frankly, I think it really does you some marketing good to not be available to agents like that. Because I'll tell you what, the real estate community knows those people and they know what they are like, and they don't enjoy dealing with them either. Because if they'll beat you up and take advantage of you, they'll also take advantage of the agent on the other side and anyone else they can. And so we simply say, no, sorry, we're too busy, can't work with you, you might try somebody else. And so they generally get the impression after maybe a couple of calls that, yeah, and I won't, when people are abusive, it's not just to the inspector, it can be to customer service people, someone who answers the phone, and for a sole proprietor, might be the wife, might be the husband. But yeah, I'm sorry, the life is too short to deal with people who are nasty, mean, unprofessional. I don't think any of us need business that badly that you will put up with personal abuse. So that's my read on it. Again, if you're starving to death, it's a little harder to take that position, but I think it's the right one.
Thank you, Alan. So Brad just wants to reinforce something. You were talking earlier, that message, a critical message of what can I do to help? And he just wanted to say, that he learned that from a gentleman, Carson Dunlop, like yourself, Graham, and echoed that same sentiment of what can he do to help. And he said that has ended up helping him so many times to be an advocate instead of the villain. And that reinforces what you're trying to say, that works so well for him.
Well, I'm glad to, and thank you for saying that. And it is so true. And it's good to hear the testimonials where people say, yeah, That's true. It does make a difference. And remember that the homeowner's goal is to have a good house that doesn't have any problems. And if you can help them get there, the blame thing kind of falls into the background. And so being solution oriented, how can I help? What can we do to get you through this goes a long way. So yeah, thanks. That's a great comment.
Wayne, he's actually a new member to the Horizon community. He's taking his coursework. Says, what do you think about selling home inspections? Do you feel you get a lot more complaints versus buyers? Is it a mixed bag? What's your experience here at Carson Dunlop?
Sellers versus buyers home inspection. This is going to be anecdotal because I don't track the results. We don't have enough complaints to have a huge database on that kind of thing anyway. I'm going to say, I don't know that there is one over the other. What you have to be careful of with the seller's inspection is the complaint comes from the buyer who you did not get to meet. So the buyer, unless in our market, we offer buyers a walkthrough or an on-site review, and they can do that for about half the price of an inspection. But a lot of buyers don't take us up on it. So a buyer moves into a house, and we didn't get a chance to build that rapport, to become the trusted advisor, to become the friend. And so we probably get slightly on a percentage basis more complaints because the people don't know us and respect us the same way as most of our buyers' clients do. But again, I don't have a big enough sample size to tell you on that. There's a little more risk to doing seller's inspections because of that. So you should be aware of that. However, I will tell you that seller's inspections probably make up 40% of our volume and are definitely a fascinating way to perform home inspections. And I think, Brian, we should probably do a session on pre-listing inspections one of these months.
Very soon. I think there would be a fascinating topic for a lot of people on. Daryl has a question. You mentioned earlier about avoiding the word monitor for your task. Why?
And I'm trying to remember the context of how I made that comment, but
top 15 report writing suggestions.
Right, but there was a message wrapped around that. Monitor is sometimes it's perfectly appropriate, but it's very often sometimes a bit of a waffle on the home inspector's part, and sometimes and I'm trying to think, and I took one of our guys to task on this within the last month, and I wish I could remember the example. But when you ask somebody, let's say it's a 3-story house with a flat roof on top of it, and it's a modified bitumen roof, and the seams are a little bit loose and so on. So telling someone to monitor the roof when you know the average homeowner is not going to get up on the roof, or tell them to monitor the performance of a piece of mechanical equipment like a furnace or an air conditioner, it's not helpful to the client because they don't know how to monitor it and what to do. If there's a crack in the basement and you want to tell them to watch that for water leakage, especially during the spring when the snow is melting or after a heavy rain, that makes sense to me for monitor. So it's more a question of monitor in and of itself isn't bad. It's when it gets used to give unhelpful advice. And sometimes home inspectors use the word monitor to avoid telling people something is almost ready for replacement. So if the furnace is 26 years old and you're saying, it's getting, it's been around a long time, instead of telling somebody to plan for replacement of that furnace at any time, telling them to monitor the furnace, I think, is a bit of an evasive, ducking your head in the sand, not wanting to give bad news, report writing technique for a home inspector who should know better.
Perfect. Because Daryl actually gave a use case. He says, I use it for typical cracks and things. So I guess that would be a suitable use in your idea.
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So that kind of where the homeowner can track it, that makes perfect sense.
Awesome. As a follow-up, not necessarily to the regarding monitor, but Daryl's second question is, how do you know if someone is a broker or your insurer? I think we were talking about E&O at this point.
because the broker almost always has the word insurance brokerage or agent in the name of the company. And then the insurer would be like, yeah, Aviva is a big insurance company. And so for the most part, E&O carriers, Hub is in Canada, HUB, Hub is the biggest broker. And so most of the people who advertise in the home inspector newsletters and websites, those are usually brokers. So the insurers don't typically deal directly with the clients. The brokers are whoever you pay your insurance premium to is usually a broker, although sometimes the check is made out to the insurance company. But yeah, and if you're not sure, you can certainly ask, are you the broker or are you the insurance company? Because the brokers don't pay the claims. The brokers are really salespeople. And they typically work with sometimes more than one insurance company. So a broker tries to put clients together with the right insurer, and that's the role of the broker. So in much the same way as a real estate broker does. So yeah, so usually it's their name that tells you. Secondly, it's usually who you pay. And thirdly, just ask.
Mark has a question, a couple actually. First, how many extra photos do you find that you typically take on an inspection? And then roughly how many can you take with Horizon in general for a report?
How many can you and should you are two very interesting questions. I say you should probably have 20 to 40 reports, or 20 to 40 photos, maybe 50 photos in the report. You might take another 25 or 30 as unused photos. Horizon, I believe, allows you to take 200 photos. I would not necessarily encourage that. I find people complain a lot about it taking forever to write a report. Part of the problem people create for themselves is creating a monstrous file of photos that they have to sort through to write the report data. So Horizon Mobile provides a good solution to that, but there is so much clutter and so much stuff that people never use. Taking extra photos and then having to sort through them and decide which ones are the good ones you want and which ones you don't. It's amazing how much time that uses up. So I sometimes find that the cure is worse than the disease. People are so nervous about ever getting sued, they collect all this extra data, they spend all this extra time. And if you multiply that out over 5 years, they've added 2.5 months of work to their work life to avoid a $2,500 issue. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Fantastic. And Mark, a secondary question. His instructor, after finishing the course, told him, write the report for the judge. Any truth to that?
I'm going to take a twist on that, and I'm going to say write the report for the client and represent the house. People say, who's your loyalty to? I don't think it's to the client. I don't think it's to the agent. I don't think it's to the judge. I don't think it's to the seller. I think your loyalty is to the house. Your report should reflect the house as you see it and understand it. Now, keeping the judge in mind might keep you on the straight and narrow, which is to say, don't go off on a tangent. Don't take a big risk in your report. Don't draw a conclusion that's a big leap. And don't exaggerate or minimize problems, because the judge will tear that apart. So I kind of like the comment, but I don't want people, the part that makes me nervous about the comment is people write reports that get so defensive so that they don't get sued, that there's so much limitation language in there that it's hard for the homeowner, the client, to pull the valuable information that's important to them out of all the verbiage. So you can't bury the report in defensive language because a judge would like it, because you can't predict everything that might ever happen. And to me, here's a perfect example. Don't write the report for the judge by putting in all the limitations that are already in your standards of practice. by all means refer to the standards of practice, by all means include a copy, but do not reiterate the standards of practice exclusions in the body of your report. It just becomes clutter. And doing that because a judge might like it, because the judge wouldn't then have to bother to go to the standards of practice to read it, is not a good opinion, not a good reason to put it in my opinion.
Thank you, Alan. Wayne has a somewhat technical question here. So if a roof is failing, is the inspector's responsibility to report that the state, to report on the state that it sort of may fail, and that's going to result in property damage, or to simply point that the roof has defects, right? So how much do they need to elaborate on, that particular concern, right? So in this case, a roof that's shot, defunct, do you just necessarily replace it, or do you need to extrapolate upon that?
I think in most cases, and I differ from a lot of home inspectors on this one, I think you have to go a little further than most home inspectors do to explain the implications or the why. And that's really what this question is. So the roof is failing. Do I leave it at that? Or do I say the roof is failing and the leakage can cause damage to the structure and the finishes and the contents inside the house? So we provide those implications. I think it's important to tell people, and it's self-evident in some respects, but to get into that as a general consistent approach to writing reports, to always include the implication, is, I think, a best practice way to go about conducting yourself.
Thank you. Mukesh asked, do your inspectors leave any type of token, customary gift at the end of the inspection, something to, tangible that your clients receive to help connect, right? Because the report itself is very, well, it's obviously, it's in physical, or not physical, right? But so it's intangible. Is there something you do to connect with the client physically?
It's a great question. We don't. Until fairly recently, we actually gave people a hard copy of the technical reference guide, which has some thumb value. It's a big red book. On the other side of the coin, all of you can include that whole book in each and every one of your home inspection reports as a PDF just by clicking the button on the report publishing page. So the added value is not great. There's obviously a cost to doing that. It does have some impact. We don't do it. I know a lot of home inspectors will give people a tape measure, not a bad idea, something like that. I'm not a big advertising and marketing kind of guy. And to me, that client has already chosen you and decided to use you. So giving them a gift at the end might be a bit of a positive reinforcement. But to me, a much more valuable gift is A, the great report that you referred to, Brian, but also the gift of saying, and I'm here to answer any questions you have for as long as you own the home. I think that's worth a whole lot more than a $5 or a $10 gift that may or may not get used and may or may not get lost. And I also think in terms of Horizon Marketer is a great way to build on that comment. That's another gift that you can give to clients. And so we don't do it. I know a lot of people do. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a bad thing, but from my perspective, there are more important and effective things you can do to help your client and to stay connected.
Thank you, Alan. David, as an individual who's still in training, a lot of this conversation is, trying to preempt the issues and be proactive when the situation occurs and you get a complaint. But from a new inspector, this can be a lot of doom and gloom and seems quite fearful, right? If I was putting my foot into this pond, I'm hoping I'm not getting bit. So is it realistic that you're going to be expecting a lot of complaints, a lot of calls from lawyers, a lot of lawsuits in your experience, Alan?
No, and I apologize. I should have done a better job. And I never know quite how many new people are attending these webinars and how many are experienced. So I'm trying to talk to a broad audience. And I didn't do a good enough job of saying, and actually it was interesting. The first poll might have been interesting to you because most people don't get very many claims is the long and short of it. I've talked to home inspectors who've been around for 10 years or so and said I've never had a complaint. So I don't want this to be such a focus that it makes you stop and say, hey, do I really want to do this? I can tell you, after doing this for 42 years, I can't think of a more rewarding profession where you get a chance to make a difference in people's lives every day. You get well paid for what you do. You're a professional consultant. You add great value. You make a big difference in people's lives. And so, yeah, the topic tonight was definitely a little scary to new people. For that, I apologize. It's not how I feel generically about the profession at all, nor should you, in my opinion.
Thank you, Alan. And just to piggyback off that, in previous life, I've booked about 4,000 inspections or so, maybe for Carson Dunlop, and I can still count with plenty of fingers to spare the number of complaints I've personally ever received from the company. So it's nothing you're going to encounter too often whatsoever. Nick has a question here, and maybe it's related to COVID, but lately there are more and more requests to have an inspection without the client present. Would you still do the inspection? Do you acknowledge this request in the contract and/or report?
So if I understood the question correctly, is asking if the client does not want to attend, would I still do the inspection? Absolutely. I understand, and especially with COVID. And even without COVID, some clients simply can't attend the inspection. So we strongly encourage, were the words that I use. We obviously don't force people, or we don't refuse to do the inspection if they cannot attend. If they can't attend, we have a phone conversation or phone consultation with them after the inspection.
My apologies, I might have misworded that, sir. Do you have a slightly different acknowledgement or agreement if due to COVID, or just that they don't attend? So if they're going to be present, they sign one contract. If they're not going to be present due to COVID or whatever, they sign a different one.
No, we do have a COVID protocol that we ask people to follow and so on. But no, our inspection agreement is the same whether the client is there or not.
Perfect. Christopher, I noticed you asked a question about having access to the download. You're having some trouble with the handout. I'm going to send it to you personally, so no problem whatsoever. I see you having an issue with that. I'll get it to you after this presentation. Guarantee I'm a good man. Okay, so folks, we are at 10:06. We've been here for 2 hours. We had planned to be here for 90 minutes, and I know obviously we have a great Q&A session that we always allot for. But in the interest of both your and Alan's time, I know that everyone's probably got an inspection tomorrow morning, or if not afternoon. So I'm going to round things off with another question or two, and then we are going to say good evening. However, questions that have not been addressed, all right? If you've left, all right, sorry, tough luck. I'll try to get you in the next one. But for anyone still attending right this minute, if I have not, or rather more specifically, Alan has not answered your question, I guarantee you between now and Friday, you'll get an email response with the answer to your question. And if you have a follow-up, you can certainly respond, and we'll engage and answer you best we can. So we're going to round off things with 2 more questions. We're going to say goodnight. And then again, anyone who didn't get an answer, you will get an answer by Friday, and we will be sending the follow-up email with a link to the video so you can watch the whole thing at your leisure. So, excuse me. Ryan has a question. I am a retired military vet. Ryan, first and foremost, thank you for serving the country. And I'm now studying for my HI exam. What is one piece of advice you would offer for your prep?
Piece of advice for the exam, was that the question, Brian?
Yes, sir. He's studying for his home inspection exam. And what's the big piece of advice, one central thing you'd suggest to the gentleman?
The big piece of advice would be don't sweat it. It's probably almost all the exams are multiple choice. There are a few general rules for multiple choice exams, including trust your gut the first time, move all the way through. If a question makes no sense to you, gloss over it. Don't spend a lot of time on a question you're struggling with. Pick all the low-hanging fruit first, if you will. The longest answer is often the right answer. If you're down to guessing between 2 possibilities, that would be a way to do it. But obviously, knowing the content and being comfortable with the knowledge. Also understand that you don't have to get every question right in an exam. Home inspection is significantly complicated. If you're taking the Carson Dunlop program, there are 10 post-secondary courses. It is not a walk in the park. And so don't shoot for perfection. And generally speaking, by the way, if you don't pass the exam the first time, there's a lot of people in that club, then you phone up where you need to and get it the second time. But yeah, few ideas in there.
Thank you. Robert has a question. Have you ever stopped an inspection midway through because it appears based on, say, clients' comments, behavior, it's sort of going to be like a high-risk inspection? You know, something's going to turn out to be bad for you.
We have walked away very, very rarely. We've walked away, even if it's the client we don't like. When we've walked away, we have said, we are not qualified to inspect this house properly. And so we'll take the responsibility. We'll say, it's our failing. I can remember my partner, Bob Dunlop, back in the day, who I have a lot of respect for, needless to say. He walked away from an inspection because the construction was so unusual that he said, I can't possibly evaluate this. So we walked away from that one. We've walked away from a handful over the years, and we don't charge a fee. We apologize for the inconvenience, and we say, I would not be doing you a favor to try to complete this inspection. And you can use that argument even if it's a client-related issue, and just say, I'm not qualified to do this inspection. And we never point a finger at the client. But yeah, very, very rarely, but we have done it.
Thank you, Alan. And sorry, just because this last question tails so nicely into that as a finish, Joel, so you're getting some pushback from a client because they didn't test the dishwasher. It was loaded with the current tenant dishes. What's the best way to respond to that last question? And I think it dovetails nicely into the last one.
Well, yeah, we don't, first of all, we don't inspect appliances. Some people do. You need a protocol for that. If you inspect dishwashers and you're not going to operate them if they have dirty dishes in them, I would suggest you stop inspecting appliances, because most dishwashers have dishes in them most of the time. So as I say, we don't inspect appliances. Here's my philosophy about home inspection and dishwashers. I am trying to help a person make one of the most important lifestyle and financial decisions they will ever make. I'm trying to help them understand whether they should go ahead with this purchase and what the significant costs they might incur are. To have somebody say to me, gosh, I found the perfect house. The only thing that was wrong with it was the dishwasher leak, so I had to walk away from the house, makes absolutely no sense to me. I don't think the condition of the dishwasher should affect anybody's decision to buy a house or not buy a house. So it's one of the reasons the new ASHI standards require you to inspect appliances. I respectfully disagree. Like a microwave oven, seriously, that is a part of what should help somebody decide whether to buy a house or not. Appliances last, what, 10 years these days? Yeah, budget for replacing the appliances. It's part of the joy of home ownership. Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I would dissuade you from inspecting appliances unless you have to. You're required by your standards of practice. And then I can't remember. I think ASHI probably has a guideline for doing it. But again, you would not operate very many dishwashers if there were no dishes in them.
All right. Sorry, if you're going to say anything else over there, Alan?
I meant to say unless there were no dishes in them.
No, thank you. I appreciate the insight. I didn't realize the update to the standards, so I think I opened up a can of worms there, but we'll leave it for another month. Do you have any final thoughts, closing thoughts, Alan?
No, just thank you for bearing with me through a challenging topic, and we'll try and make the next one more fun.
All right, everyone, have a fantastic evening. Thank you for tuning in. You'll get the email on Friday, which is in 2 days from now, and otherwise, make sure to reach out to us for any support or training you need. Thanks for choosing Horizon, everyone. Good luck on your inspections. Thanks, Alan, for your time this evening. Over and out, all.
Brian, thanks for hosting as always and taking great care of me.
Cheers. Have a great one, everyone.